special panel discussion on the topic of managed cloud services, customer CIO panel. So without further ado, मैं चाहूँगी जोरदार तालियों की गड़गड़ाहट से आप उनका वेलकम करें. Starting with our moderator, Balaka Barao, Executive Editor, Enterprise IT World. Sir, please come forward. Let's welcome sir with a round of applause, please. Moving forward, Naresh Pathak, CDO Intensity Global Technologies, Sharad Agarwal, CDO JK Tire, Anand Sinha, CIO Birlasoft, Anand Agarwal, Head IT Assets Care and Reconstruction, India. So we have our moderator, ma'am, here. Thank you so much for coming in here today, as well as the dignitaries here on stage. I would request the lady in question, our moderator, to kindly take the session forward now. Thank you so much.
Hello. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Balaka. I'm moderating this session. Since we are running behind time, I'll keep the conversation short. So this panel discussion is about managing cloud complexities. As we know, cloud was a novelty about a decade ago. But the value proposition and the appeal of cloud has been so much that there has been unprecedented growth. And today, we see a multitude of cloud structures in the form of hybrid cloud, private clouds, and what have you. Now, cloud adoption has been triggered by, amongst other things, digital transformation, the need to enable remote working, primarily due to the COVID-induced lockdown, and the need to access emerging technologies such as data analytics and very powerful IT resources. But because of these different IT environments and also the proliferation of different kinds of as a service, such as security as a service, collaboration as a service, has added to the complexities of the operating environment. But there is a way out. How do we get out of this? Then there is this breed of service providers called managed service providers. They are the experts bringing in a lot of capabilities and helping out businesses to navigate these complexities. So what are some of these best practices in managing a service provider? What are some of the SLAs? What are some of the challenges businesses are facing in terms of managing cloud, and how are service providers enabling them to navigate these challenges? These are some of the things that we will be discussing in this panel. And we have an esteemed panel of guests. They are practitioners, both from the IT consumer side and as well as service providers. The panel has been introduced, but I will quickly take a round. So would you maybe just quickly introduce yourself in 2 sentences?
Great. So my name is Naresh Pathak, and I work with Intensity Global as Chief Digital Officer.
Myself, Sharad Agarwal. I work for JK Tires. Interesting place to be in.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Agarwal.
Good evening. Myself, Anand Sinha, CIO for Birlasoft. Around near to 3 decades of experience in IT, telco, and media.
Hi, this is Anand Agarwal. I am a CIO at Assets Care and Reconstruction Enterprises. Almost 3 decades of experience in telecom, BFSI, and NBFC sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's start with a foundational question, which is what are the challenges in managing cloud deployments? Would you like to take up the question, Mr. Sharad?
Thank you. So the challenges are multifold, though it's easy to think that cloud will solve all the problem. It's a panacea for everything, but ideally we need a very strong governance. We need to focus on the security aspect, as well as we need to be very cognizant of the fact that if we have put up something on an auto scale up mode, it's not getting consumed to a level. Normally people in the initial days thought that their budget would be say 100 rupees, but they ended up paying 200, 300, 400 rupees in some cases.
Right.
So the cadence for setting up the entire program, as well as when we talk of cloud, we have to set up the DevSecOps pipeline. The CI/CD pipelines have to be in place. And most importantly, we need new skill sets that would help all of us. So these skill sets vary a bit from the way on-prem hardware services were being maintained, because now we are getting everything as a service. So we need to be sort of aware of what is available, what can be consumed. A build versus buy in some of the software cases also is very, very pertinent. So these are just a few, and the list can be endless. But yes, it is certainly helping all of us as users to scale up quickly, to test quickly. I won't say fail fast, but yes, test fast and find a solution fast.
Thank you, Mr. Sharad. Mr. Anand Sinha, would you like to take up this question, both
Sure.
as a consumer of managed services as well as a provider of managed services, if you
Sure.
could share some perspectives?
So for me, as we all know, cloud is a journey.
Yes.
And the deployment, before deployment start, there are a lot of challenges, both as an organization, as a CIO, plus both as a MSP, as a partner.
Yes.
We all need to go through. First we need to decide which cloud itself,
Yes.
which cloud we have to go. That decision itself is a very challenging, because we need to know the complete architecture. We also need to design it correctly so that we should not fail, because cloud journey is a journey, but there is a commitment also to the organization that we are going to do something out of it. So one is, of course, the cloud selection of which cloud. Then comes to our vendor and
Yes.
managed service partner who is going to support this journey. So these are the two things before our deployment journey start. These are very critical for us, and we need to have a clear-cut identification of right partner and a right cloud service provider. Then coming to, by default, if you talk about cloud, the data security is one of challenging area where the whole cloud deployment is dependent on what kind of architecture you are going on. So there are certain cases where I have seen that being a managed service provider, people are not thinking embedding the security at the starting itself. But what we are doing after implementation of cloud, they are looking and talking about security. So security need to be embedded in your architecture correctly. Otherwise, you will face a lot of challenges during the deployment, of course. Skills. So now, skills and trainings are very essential for the entire journey. As Sharad rightly said, there are a lot of services you are going to consume on cloud. There will be different kind of flavors on databases, different kind of microarchitectures and microservices. You need to have those clear understanding on those skills. People should be readily available to support. And if in case there is some problem, they will be there to help you.
Yes.
So training and skill is also very challenging and to be taken care during the deployment.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Anand Agarwal, would you like to share some of your experiences?
Yeah, sure. So I think let me say that why do we go onto the cloud?
Yes.
I mean, we go onto the cloud because we feel it is a flexible, easy to deploy, time to market new services could be very easy. I mean, for a company which are in an environment where there are seasonal spikes or comes,
Yes.
so they would be able to handle the customers more efficiently and without any this thing. Cost efficiency we also talk about when we look at the cloud. While all these things are true, but I think if they are not managed properly, all these things could become a major contention. And while Sharadji and Anand already talked about most of the point, maybe it's a repetition for me from that perspective. But the challenge that I faced personally first was that which cloud I should select when I was actually looking at this thing. I mean, you talk to every cloud operator, they say my cloud is the best cloud. Now, the second challenge which comes related to it, that then I should have a relevant skill set available to be able to say, no, not this cloud, but that is the better, because, so what we finally did was that we looked at our business requirement, and based on the business requirement, we look at who is offering me a better transparency. That was we looked at. I mean, one is that, I mean, as Sharji said, that you may budget X amount, but if the charges are transparent, you may be able to relatively able to forecast that this is expenses you are going to incur on your deployment per se. So the skill set came up as one of the biggest challenge, this thing. So we engaged MSP provider, and we gave our requirement, and we were onboarded into the cloud setup, with an assumption that we will have some X amount of cost which will be incurring. Somebody says you reserve for 1 year, you pay, somebody says you do this thing. We said, no, we don't need 24/7 system running, so we'll have some kind of setup, but we'll go pay as you go. Suddenly we realized after 2 months that our cost was started doubling from what we had thought of. So while the workload has not increased from our perspective per se, consumption, but so we realized that in this, the configuration that we have originally thought of, when the servers were coming up in the morning by the cloud service provider, those were coming up at a higher configuration. Now that was resulting into a bill shock. Yeah. So the key is that this may happen for many of us more, but if you are monitoring continuously, you will be able to track it, and you will be able to take corrective action immediately. So I think that was the learning that we had in terms of this thing. Now the other thing which we have is that you have up and running on cloud, but security is not cloud operator responsibility, it is your own responsibility. Now what kind of security you have to deploy is again you have to look at. So I think these were some of the challenges which we personally we faced. And I think that is my learning from the cloud environment, is that in a one line, it's a good, is a non-negotiable. We cannot live without it in today's scenario. But unless you properly plan and monitor it, you would have shocks which would be difficult to. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So the context has been beautifully set. You've all mentioned so many of these things that happen quite frequently in terms of, say, not having the right alignment in terms of workloads with the right resources, ability to choose the right technologies, defining security properly, and of course, the challenge related to finding the right skill sets. These are all some of the things that businesses have been struggling. Now, one challenge that has, the panelists have identified is cost optimization, cost overruns. So one of the most appealing value proposition in the cloud was the pay-as-you-go model. But in very large-scale deployments, this actually turns out perhaps more expensive in the long run. What do you think about, the cost optimization approaches, or the cost proposition in the cloud?
Thank you.
Yeah.
See, for the cost optimization,
Yes.
one of the most important pieces, continuous monitoring.
Yes.
Whatever you have hosted in the cloud, this is very important that you monitor it. Somebody has to be there who is monitoring those applications, what the payload is there.
Yes.
And then FinOps plays a very important role.
Yes.
Where you can bring in visibility.
Yes.
Okay, what is there being hosted, and that visibility helps a lot in a different segment, that where the cost is going to be. What happens is generally people just host it and then they don't care.
Yes.
Okay, and then when you sit in the reviews, then you suddenly realize, oh, this was planned, and then after a year or maybe After 6 months, the cost is really going out. When you receive the invoices, people can realize on these things. So you have to really see that what you continuously are loading, it is really required to hold there, or you can remove it, you can put it off. Those activities plays an important role. So FinOps is one of the important pieces. There are different tools which you can deploy, which can give you reports, you can analyze, and that has to be on a monthly basis.
Yes.
That's what is the important piece.
So is it only monitoring, or it can also be controlled?
This can be controlled, but here you will have a constructive decision.
Right.
This will not be just like that, so you will have a proper data, because whenever you are taking any decision, you need a backing from the data. And these tools help you
Yeah.
to take a decision. So
Right.
data is there, and then you can take a call, and then accordingly you can, remove those, workload which is not required.
And perhaps even configure alerts, for
This
idle
includes that.
instances.
So the visibility, and when I say monitoring, this includes both.
Yes.
Usually we don't focus on those configuration pieces.
Yeah.
We do it once, and then we receive requests from the different people, and we keep loading things.
Yes.
And there has to be somebody responsible, to
Yes.
continuously check that, okay, check and balance is required.
Yes. Okay. Now, taking the discussion forward, Mr. Sharad, what value does a managed service provider bring to this equation? What specific things in cloud management, would a customer ideally outsource?
Yeah, that's a very important point. As I had touched upon a point of skill availability, the
Yes.
talent. So you cannot do everything in-house.
Yes.
Even businesses are now looking forward to sort of hive off or outsource, which is non-core. Suppose we make tires, so tires are our core.
Yes.
But if we want to manage everything on our own by hiring any number of people, because the skill sets are changing.
Yes.
Secondly, it may not be possible for me to get the people in the sort of organization I'm working for. Because the MSPs work on a different schedule. They have people available for you 24/7
Yeah.
because they have shifts, they have shared resources. Resources are shared, but they are available to you as and when required. So that's the most important piece that any MSP will bring to you in terms of the talent.
Yes.
And because of the talent, they have got expertise. These are relatively new technologies.
Yes.
And the tools that are being used, be it for monitoring, be it for setting up a collaboration tool, so whatever is being used is mostly new.
Yes.
So it may take time for us to in-house imbibe them, learn them, and by the time we learn them, a new tool, a better
Correct.
tool, a
Correct.
better proposition may be on the table.
Yes.
So these are all the various factors for which MSP, in
Yes.
brackets, if knowledgeable.
Yes. Right.
So that it can't be taken for granted that every MSP would be equally potential to give you the services, but a good MSP will solve all these issues and help you take your business forward.
Correct.
Because we as users are looking for business.
Yes.
Suppose, just in case, taking 30 more seconds, we provide tire as a service in
Yes.
which to bigger fleets. So tire as a service are our core strengths.
Yes.
But if we want to focus on everything to build the software from scratch, or even to set up our data center,
Yes.
not thinking of cloud, or even if in cloud we are thinking of doing everything in-house,
Yeah.
that's a bit difficult and I would say impragmatic.
Right. Yeah, so that's a very valid point. So an MSP takes the responsibility of running the house, the basic brick and mortar, so that the customer is able to focus on value creation by using technology. So, Mr. Anand, what do you think are the capabilities to look for in a managed service provider? What kind of capabilities do you think you should look at when you go shopping for a managed service provider for cloud
Sure.
services?
Very good question, because as I mentioned, cloud is a journey, and it's a kind of opportunity for the organization to reassess their architecture. Because when we are taking a decision to migrate on the cloud, it is not a shift left, something like everybody will go for. This is the time and opportunity for each and every organization to assess our legacy infrastructure, legacy architecture, and there MSP will play a major role, right? MSP will help you with their capability of doing the re-architecturing, suggesting on the domain perspectives, on the security perspective. They will have expertise in each and every area, be it your security, be it your data warehouse if you're creating on cloud, if you are creating a data analytics setup, or maybe your microservice architecture. So they will bring a lot of capability around pool of resources with different knowledge and vertical. Plus, if you think from managed service provider perspective, they will also give you flexibility of pay-as-you-go model. So you can choose which services need to be enabled now, which services need to be enabled later on. But at least it will help you using their capabilities, their knowledge, to design your cloud infrastructure in such a way which will definitely give some kind of business benefit to the organization. Another capability, because cloud is something that we propose and we internally also do, we create our well-thought business case. So business case is very important because in there you need a lot of input from managed service provider. If we are going with, let's say, not going directly on shift left architecture, instead of we are going on Kubernetes. So what kind of saving, what kind of opportunity for organization in terms of increase in productivity, those capability MSP will bring to you while you are discussing your cloud journey. They will understand, they will really suggest some good best practices which you can embed in the cloud.
So basically, MSP brings in best practices, brings in business understanding as well, and participates with the customer as a partner in taking forward business.
You can say they are our partner of cloud crime.
Yes. Nice way to put it. Mr. Anand Agarwal, what do you think are the capabilities that one should look for?
So, I would say that first I would look at, from a capability perspective, the capability of the MSP itself in terms of being able to take me from planning stage to deployment to monitoring on an ongoing basis itself. See, cloud is not a product which you just buy, deploy it and forget it. It is a journey, as we all are talking about, and it has to be continuously monitored, continuously looked upon, continuously improved upon. So that's the first important thing from my perspective, is the capability of the partner. Is the partner capable? Do they have right skill sets available to be able to work with me throughout the journey when I am on this particular setup? Now the other thing is that, I mean, ultimately it's a technology. Technology may fail, there may be some downtimes. I mean, I'm having a problem at 8 o'clock in the night, and when I call up a MSP, he says, oh, no, sorry sir, but I work 9 to 6 only. I need a person who should be able to, who is agile, who works with me. If I have a problem, who should be able to quickly work with me and resolve that particular problem. I think that is the other capability that I would look at from that perspective. Now, other thing which is the secure, again we talked about from a challenge, then I will look at the security capability of a partner. I mean, partner may have good technical capability in terms of cloud deployment, but do they have a security practice also? Because lot of things, I mean, to protect the cloud environment, we need to deploy a lot of tools in terms of, depending upon the kind of workload we have, whether it is access related tools, whether it is log related tools, backup related tools. So we need to have that kind of skill set which is available. Now, other thing is that you have deployed. Now, is he monitoring my workload or all those things on a manual basis, or certain tools are available which will raise an alarm, and those can be quickly fixed rather than manually somebody is looking at and then when this thing, and provide me the monthly report in terms of that, what is my performance, what are the opportunity for optimization, what are the opportunity for optimization from the cost perspective, what are the opportunity from optimization from the resource perspective. So that is other thing which I would look at. Now, Another thing is that it's, as I said, that it is not buy and forget it. I would also like to look at have the functionality wherein the MSP gives me a dedicated account manager. So it is not that if I call somebody and call center picks up, he said, sir, let me understand your environment, then I will come back to you. So at least somebody who need to understand my requirement, because if my cloud infra is down, it's quite possible that my critical applications are down. I think these are some of the things which I would say from that perspective, which I would look at while evaluating a MSP.
I think you've made a very important point in terms of, checking out what kind of technical capabilities they have, given that every cloud environment has very specific technologies, and there are multitude of tools that work particularly in that environment. And as well as there are a lot of services that these hyperscalers are offering that are very similar and overlapping. But to know and identify which particular services align to what kind of workload is a very critical distinction in having a very optimized workload deployment. So I can't remember very specifics, but I do know that AWS has a lot of, similar services which they keep coming out. They keep, taking out new services. But there are overlaps, and each time there are overlaps, there are specific upgrades in the new
True.
service.
So I think one more thing you rightly said. Now, take example of AWS itself.
Yeah.
Now, when AWS launch new servers,
Yes.
the cost is lesser than the services which are being available
Previous
from both
one,
things.
yes.
Now, it is MSP who can tell us, no, why don't you go on to migrate to this thing? I mean, it will
Yes.
help you reduce the cost, and rather than take the old servers which are available still thing.
Yes.
I think so. While we cannot escape, MSPs are there, and this market is certainly growing. But I think this capability becomes extremely important of those in terms of that particular cloud environment. This thing.
Also, there are different kinds of pricing structures, such as on-demand, reserved instances, spot instances. So an MSP must be able to advise what kind of workloads are ideally suited for which kind of pricing.
One more benefit with MSP that there are a lot of services
Yes.
as a cloud service provider they offer. MSP will help you enable to trial and test before deciding those
Yes.
things, right? So that you are not investing in the day one. You will do the trial and testing, and they will also support the complete POC, complete testing, and ensuring that services what we are looking for or what we are going to purchase, that has making a business sense to it.
Right.
So that's why if we are going with this MSP, then it will definitely help and benefit the organization.
Right, yeah. Mr. Naresh, what kind of SLAs should businesses, design with to have a good engagement, a fulfilling engagement with MSP?
See, जब हम सर्विसेज किसी मैनेज सर्विस प्रोवाइडर को देने जा रहे हैं,
Yes.
तो obviously we will be expecting much better services.
Yes.
So here SLA definitely plays a very important role.
Yes.
सबसे पहले what is important is कि आपका जो reliability है,
Yes.
the availability of your services provided by these MSP is very important. So we have to be very clear on what sort of, the availability is there, what sort of software and hardware, they are going to utilize. Because what happens, we usually don't read those SLAs in detail. We should not go with the standard SLA. हर एक के लिए क्या है, रिक्वायरमेंट अलग अलग होगा. हर इंडस्ट्री का अपना रिक्वायरमेंट है. देयर इंडस्ट्रीज वेयर 24/7 they need their business to be run. There are industries जहाँ ठीक है, working hours is very important, and after that and they don't care. They are not running their business 24/7. So accordingly, they will set that, the availability piece of it.
Yeah.
That we have to be very clear on it. The other piece is, the disaster recovery piece. Those terms have to be written very clearly, that if something goes wrong, each and everything should be written in detail.
Right.
How, when, where, the services will be, get up if something goes wrong. Although we put these things in a different location, but you don't know that the problem may happen at other location also. Yeah. So these are the factors, which the most important piece is each and everything should go through in detail.
Yes.
On all these areas, and that has been agreed upon. These should not go with the standard SLA. Do your own custom SLA as per your business requirement. This is what I would say.
Do you think a separate SLA is called for in terms of cybersecurity?
Yeah, definitely. There has to be, because see, cybersecurity piece is completely different.
Yes.
Because here, it depends whether you put things on a monitoring, 24/7 monitoring, or you have a limited monitoring where, okay, a particular, during daytime, they are responsible to bring in what sort of, it's completely managed, or it's kind of, they are monitoring and they just share those findings and then you are going to take action.
Yeah.
So what type of agreement you are entering it? Because it all depends, business to business, and how the management is really supporting, what sort of agreement you are getting. But it's good to have a separate SLA for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Sharad, what do you think about managed security services? Do you need to have a separate managed service provider for security services and a separate one for cloud operations?
It depends what type of partners we are looking for, because there are behemoth-like partners who have a separate security practice as
Yes.
well as separate services practice. But ideally, what I feel can benefit customers like us is
Yes.
to have both of them separate so
Separate.
that they can play devil's advocate to each other.
I see.
Because sometimes what happens, if I am doing both the things, you are doing both the things for me,
Yeah.
so one of the things may go under the carpet.
Yes.
So having us, because security, as Naresh ji pointed out, is a very specialized subject and is evolving and threatening everyone
Yes.
in a different nuance every day. So it keeps everyone on the toes. So it's better to have separate MSP and MSSP, if we can
Yes.
call that.
But there are overlaps there in the sense, security in the cloud is very different in terms of configuration and allowing access and all. So while an MSP may be in charge of churning out instances and, taking care of that. So if the MSP who is looking after infra is not very careful about the security part of it, then how do you separate these responsibilities?
So this segregation of responsibilities, we can put in a run book in place,
Yes.
so that if something has been done by MSP from a business or a process perspective,
Yes.
it can be validated by the MSSP from a security perspective. Just one more thing, we used to think couple of years back that if it's cloud, it's secure.
Yes.
So there were two. One people thought that initially people used to think if something is going on the cloud,
Yes.
it is no more private.
Yes.
So that was a notion that has been dispelled. But the second notion was that if something is on cloud, it's secure.
Yes.
So it's not secure by default, it
It's-
has to be made secure. Just
Yes.
wanted to make a point. But coming to your point, as we have this SOD, segregation of duties in any of the business, be it a maker checker, so even if MSP is doing it, MSSP can be the checker for it.
Yes.
So the SOD concept can be very well applied here.
Okay. Yeah, that explains very well. And I think possibly having governance systems in place, like you say, a playbook, will really help streamline and keep everybody within the lines. Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. Anand Sinha, one question I had regarding talent and skill gap. So, isn't partnering with an MSP and not developing in-house talent, perhaps, you are exposing yourself on too much relying on, a partner and not developing your own skill sets, maybe perhaps sometimes in terms of an emergency. What do you think about it?
Actually, this is the real situation, and I think it's very important to have our internal skills also to be upgraded. It's not that everything we are totally dependent on partner and do these things. But at the same time, because MSP, what Sharad has mentioned, we are also wanted to become a checker. right? So for becoming a checker, we need to understand those technology, those languages very well.
Yes.
So in that case, whatever skills, whatever technology we are asking our partner to implement for us,
Yes.
we should also upgrade our internal skills. Definitely. And there are a lot of certifications program which cloud service provider offers,
Yes.
which will enable you reaching there. And those are very, some of cloud service providers, part of your EA contract or maybe enterprise contract, if I can say, those are readily available, right? Which you can leverage and you can upgrade your skill. Plus, during this journey itself, you'll get a lot of opportunity to learn and also create a knowledge base, which we can help and create a SOPs, which can be taken care by the internal team, whatever organization if they are looking for. But one more thing is very important, that every skills and every technology, if you wanted to build in-house, that is not possible.
Not possible.
Not possible because that also involves a lot of time and effort and cost. And the way business is looking for, let's talk about generative AI, right? There are a lot of connectors, a lot of services are now readily available on the cloud. But internally, if I am going to train those people, it will take time.
Sure.
So there we have to depend on my MSPs to bring that knowledge, bring that expertise, and help my business to adapt to generative AI technology.
Yes.
At the same time, there is always a learning curve.
Right.
Right.
So last question to Mr. Anand, right? Yeah. So, like, what are your recommendations and best practices, in this managing this relationship properly?
So I think from my perspective, you look at first is that you need to do proper planning.
Yes.
I mean, have a proper plan in place, what you want to do, why you want to move to cloud, what services you want to move to cloud, what are the benefits you are going to give, how you are going to work on the cloud.
Yeah.
That is, I think, the first thing which I would look at. The second thing comes up is that what are the workloads which you are going to move. So identify those your applications into critical and non-critical applications, I think. So don't move everything in one go. Is one of this thing. So first start moving your non-critical applications onto the cloud, observe them, then move slowly start moving your critical applications, start monitoring how they are behaving in so that is the third thing which I would talk about. Now, while you're doing this migration, I mean, you also need to have a risk mitigation plan in place. I mean, in case something goes out, how do I roll back? I mean, because ultimately it's your business, this thing which will, so while that's the reason I'm saying that you should look at first non-critical application that will give you some understanding in terms of how the systems are behaving, how the systems are being monitored, how the access is, security, all those things will come into picture. So that is this thing. Now, other thing is that, I mean, as we talked about that, in case you are into business where you are going to have a seasonal loads which will come up, have the auto scale up configuration, but look at that what the benchmark at which it should auto scale and at what benchmark it should auto scale down. Otherwise, it will have a significant impact on the cost perspective also. So that is the another which is very important, this thing. Now, see, when you work on cloud after having all this thing done, you may have huge amount of data which would be available on the cloud. Now, every byte of the data on the cloud costs you money. So you need to have a proper data retention policies, how much data I want to keep on a cloud. Now, like we talked about they say that you shift from a readily accessible data to some which will take some time for you to access to the deep snow kind of. So I think you need to have proper policies which will help you in terms of, otherwise you will start incurring huge amount of cost in terms of only on the storage of the data, which you actually do not require to be accessed very frequently.
Right.
So that is the other things, this thing. Now, last but not least, one of the most important thing which I would talk about is that all this thing is done, but you cannot achieve all this thing unless and until you have a good MSP. So that becomes one of this thing from look at first.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. So very briefly, would you, Mr. Naresh, very briefly, what are the best practices and recommendations?
से देखिए, आप जो मैनेज सर्विस प्रोवाइडर की बात कर रहे हैं, तो सबसे पहले इम्पोर्टेंट पीस है कि आप जो current में whatever you are managing, you want to improve it.
Yes.
When you are going to improve it, means हम SLAs की बात किए हैं, your expectations has to be very clear.
Yes.
हर एक चीज़ को डिटेल में पूरा स्कोपिंग के अंदर आपको लिखना चाहिए.
Correct.
ठीक है. Once your scoping and expectations is very clear, I'm sure that whoever is managed service provider, they are going to deliver it. So we have to, तो जब हम प्रोजेक्ट में जैसे प्लानिंग करते हैं ना, that has to be robust. Similarly, आपके यहाँ जब सर्विस लेने जा रहे हो तो यहाँ जो स्कोपिंग और आपकी एक्सपेक्टेशंस हैं वो क्लियर होना चाहिए. एंड देन यू गो फॉर द अदर स्टफ. यू हैव लॉट ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी. आज हमने जो उठो का सुना है, उठो व्हाट यू कॉल दैट, so that's an interesting piece. I mean, I'm going to look into it in detail that, you know, what are this they are offering and also we have such kind of lot of opportunities.
Yes.
वो सब तो आप जाएंगे किसी के पास, इतने सारे प्रोवाइडर्स हैं, दे ऑल आर रेडी टू ऑफर यू. बट पहले आपको खुद क्लियर होना चाहिए कि आप करंट से और बेटर करना चाहते हैं.
Expectations are.
That's what I would like to add.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is a very interesting conversation, and with industry practitioners, we can go on, but we have to have a hard stop now. Thank you so much, Mr. Naresh, Mr. Sharad, Mr. Anand, both the Anands, Mr. Anand Sinha and Anand Agarwal. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Thank you.